Hey everyone, Tim Higgins here. I want to spend a second to talk about onboarding applications. Now, I'm using my demo APM, so there's not a lot of data, there's not a lot of traffic, but I'm going to try to cover everything pretty quickly so you all can use this as a concept of just onboarding your applications. Now, there's a couple of terminologies we need to use: ETC, ATC. Um, it's Application Team Center and also Enterprise Team Center. Now, I'm not using the Enterprise Team Center. You want to think about ETC more of an architect view. You'll see that down here, but that's not the point of this video. So whenever you think about onboarding your applications, the one thing people do is they go to their map and it just looks like a huge spider web, especially if you have a lot of agents going on. Now these are somewhat cleaned up, but imagine whenever you click on yours and it's this huge big area that it's hard to see. So what we're going to do is talk about how to manage that. The art of all of ATC or Team Center, let's call it Team Center for easiest, but the art of all of Team Center is your attributes. So if we click on one of these, you'll see your attributes over here. Now, you want to think about, let's go ahead and get some notes going here. Number one, whenever you think about cleaning up your apps, you want to think about what attributes work best for you, okay? Now, you're going to have some standards, and we'll talk about those. But you'll see through using Team Center that attributes drives almost everything from your filters to your experience cards to your dashboards. And we'll talk about those as we get to them. So here in this area, I can see I clicked on this database, and I'm going to get right into this, so please bear with me. You'll notice there's some basic attributes out of the box, okay? These are very important. You have type, now notice the type is already filled in. These are a lot of attributes that you definitely cannot modify, but they're very useful, like name. You'll use name a lot. Let's see if we can get to some actual code here. Notice this says 1. Okay, so this is very important to pay attention to because over here I have 61. So the goal here is that you're going to build filters that allow you to group these together that make sense. Okay. Now with my attributes, if I look here, this 61, that means there's 61 of these agents. I'm going to cover alerts right now. Combined as one. And then what you're trying to do is block as much as this as you possibly can. So the one thing we definitely can do here is the database. So we'll go ahead and take care of that. But let me show you a couple of things. Now there's a few ways that you can build attributes. What you're going to do is you're going to look at the basics. We're going to minimize those for now. And here, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was live mode. But here you'll notice that whenever you're building these attributes, you want to make sure that they make sense because you don't want too many of them that are just scattered and used everywhere. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to best practice do those. Let's go ahead and get started just so we can step into this. Okay, if you noticed, whenever I went to live mode, which technically you have some options down here for your custom attributes. Okay, now I can go ahead and start typing in these: owner, location, region, tier. So this would be a database tier, backend tier, and I can create new just by typing in here, right? And then if I type into this one and hit save, then it creates an attribute. Where that would come in handy is if I'm looking at my map and I select a few of these, then I can group those together, okay? Because remember, the whole point of the attributes is to help you modify and clear things up. So there's this concept called a perspective. A perspective is how do you view this? So if I want to view by host names, or if I want to view by, now there's a reason I'm jumping from attributes to this, because you'll see that in a second. Now say like that one, this does not make sense, okay, location. But what I can do from here is we go back to default view, just because it's a little bit cleaner, and I like type. To me, type makes a lot of sense. Database, WebSphere, see how that's kind of, try to put it all into a certain type. Generic front ends, web services, sockets, databases, but we're going to build one for our database. So we're going to go back to default view, and if I click this edit perspective, I can modify the perspective. Okay, now if you noticed here, this is your attributes. So whenever you think about an attribute really drives it drives everything. Basically, just think of it as tagging, or a way to label, or a way to log things, right? Not I mean log as right into the machine, but logging as putting them together, right? And then I can create a perspective, which is my view. Now I can make this view public for other people on my team members, or I can leave it just for me. So there's many things you can do with the perspective. And that's kind of what we want to do for best practice. So if I create a new perspective, and we'll call it, Tim's Demo, very bad name. In your case, it's probably company name. In my case, it's A&I Solutions. And then what are we doing? So A&I Solutions, I don't know. Well, I'm just going to use the word demo. And for my layer, we didn't talk about layers, but you're looking at APM structure layer, infrastructure, or application. Well, we care about the application. So the first thing I want to do is do some things out of the box. Okay, so there's domain, right? And you should have some, you should have a best practice of where you're coming with yours. In my case, I'm going to start with a domain, and I'm just going to leave it for there for now and see what that gives me. So that's not too bad. Okay, so I've got the super domain, and then I've got all these other right here. So now we're going to go clean those up. So now what we want to do is look at creating our attributes. So whenever we look at our map here, now remember, my map is very simple. Your map's going to be really blown up. But what you want to do is you want to click on these little icons here. And if you notice my attributes change, what we're looking for is our default. Well, it doesn't have to be here. We're looking for I was going to say we're looking at our default attributes, but no, it could be your custom attributes as well. But what we're looking for is something that are similar to each other. For example, all these are databases. Now these are types. So I could just sort on type, but I think I'm gonna do it a little bit differently, and you'll see what I mean in a few seconds. Just so you can see how that works. For an example, yeah, my type is an inferred database, but I notice there's this database : here. So what I can do is I can take this name. Okay, it's not always easy. So if we look over here, we have our little menu, if you will. So the top part of the menu is really your views. Okay, we'll go through those pretty quickly in a different video. But you also have your settings. So your settings, if you think about it, your perspective is what we talked about, right? And probably what we're going to focus on. The idea of perspective is that it's a group of attributes put together to help you create your own view. Okay, universes. We'll cover universes later, but a universe basically is a group of domains to help you manage your area. So we'll put that here, okay? And then attributes is what we're focused on. Enterprise, you'll probably never touch that, but that's if you're dealing with an ETC, and that helps you do that. And of course, security. Okay, so we're going to go and look at our attributes because we're going to create what's called an attribute rule. Now, I showed you on the right-hand side of the map. You can group those together and create an attribute, but this is probably the best practice way, and you'll see why as we build it out. So for naming conventions, what I like to do is name it the application, and in this case, I don't have an app, so I'm just going to call it AI, Very Nice Solutions. And remember, I'm going to try to group my databases together. Okay, so the newly assigned value, we'll talk about that. But right now, you'll see it when it makes sense, okay? So I'm going to use camel case here for my naming. You use whatever your company says. The existing attribute. So in this case, we want to look at name, okay? These are the attributes that already exist, okay? And you'll see what I mean. Or if they don't exist yet, then whoever's building the agent out as labels, for an example, Docker, you know this is coming into play, okay? Now, the condition, this is the cool part. You have a lot of options already. Equal, does not equal, starts with. Remember, we could do type, and I think it's deferred backends or something like that. But we're doing name, and here I want to show you how to use a regex. Is it case sensitive? I usually just leave that as no, don't make it case sensitive. But the conditional value is what is so important. So in this case, I could be wrong, but what we're going to try to do is do a database, right? And then with the database, now I want everything. So let's do this. Now that's not the best regex. For those who have ever dealt with regex, there's a lot of great regex out there. But this is just says give me database and everything after it, okay? And then what I can do now is I can evaluate. My actions are not showing up. I may have to go to a different browser, but let's, you know what, I've lost it. Okay, so I moved to a different browser. So if you notice, these buttons now exist, and for some reason they didn't show up. And I was using Chrome before, if you want to know, and now I'm using IE. Probably the best recommendation I find is using Firefox, but that's just my personal opinion, so maybe don't quote me on that. But what you'll see is I went ahead and put in our data into this one. So what we're saying is attribute name, newly assigned values from AI database, and you'll see that shortly. The existing name, basically what is the name that you want to map on, okay? The existing name is kind of confusing because when it says existing attribute name, it means if you looked on the right-hand side, all those attributes, what name do you want this data to be compared to, okay? Here's our condition, and then this is our regex. So what we can do is we can evaluate this, and I have 5. Okay, so I'm good with that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my map. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can go to 2 perspectives. There's a few here that's out of the box. I have this one that I was doing, so I can edit it from here. But what I like to do is I like to edit it from the map, because then I can see what I did happen immediately to see if it's even working for me, right? So here in the map, we created our perspective. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking they were at the bottom. So the custom perspectives are at the top, okay? I thought maybe I'd log in as a different user, someone went to a different browser, but these are the ones that are out of the box, right, if you will, and these are your custom ones. So notice it came to the top, and I was thinking it came to the bottom for some reason, but no, I was wrong. It came to the top. So now we're going to filter it, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go clean this one up. So now that I've got domain, the next thing I want to do, notice that name that I said that you'll see. So here's the name, AI database, and we'll save. See, now we've got our databases here. Now we have a socket. I can't really map a socket on anything, but I do have these web services. Let's look at them. I have 245 inside the super domain, so we may get rid of that just to show you how more detailed you can get, but I think you're getting the concept. Give it 1 second. I think it's trying to load. Because what we can do is in our perspective, yeah, there we go. So that's a lot. And that's at application. So it is, that's a lot of stuff right there. If I zoom in, and notice it's kind of flat too. Let's see. So now you have a collapse all, which is here. That will collapse to all the domains that you created. But if I click on some of these, see there's a lot of generic front ends. In fact, that's where it's probably picking that up. But I could separate those out. What I'm looking at is up here, these attributes, as they're changed. I could separate a lot of these out. So we have a demo app called Bean Login, and don't ask me questions about it. Number 1, it's not the point of the video. But number 2, I don't have anything to do with it other than use it. It's a great app. I just don't write code or anything to it. But we could group a lot of that together, but I'm not going to waste your time on the video because I think you understand what I'm getting at as far as grouping those together. So all those fell in, so it's 246 that fell in because we used the domain. So if remember, if we go back to our perspective, first thing we're grouping on is domain. So just to prove a point, if I get rid of this one, so you have to, it's kind of weird how you have to do this. I wish there was a way to like make these go up and get rid of one, but you can't. So if I save this, see, that's what it looks like now. So you're like, wow, this is really not useful, Tim. And to be honest with you, it's really not. So everything's like, there's no way I can look at this and see what's going on. I can't see if there's any errors. And I don't know about you all, but I wear glasses and I'm about blind. So for me to find something in this, it's humanly impossible. Now, the trick to that is I could zoom in, right? Especially if I see a red. So there's ways of working around it, but you really don't want to. It's very cumbersome. So what we're going to do, I want to show you this also. On top of my perspective, I could add a filter.